Yes.
The option.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to be a palindrome on the preposition.
Yes. So, in other words, with all of those given letters, we'd be able to make it.
Okay.
Well, it's not given. It
Oh.
could be like ABA, but that's would be permutation of ABA. Yeah.
Is it okay to call the 2D array and a matrix? Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
I think so. Okay.
But the output of one of those, one output means the right I mean, the output. Oh. was much younger.
Thanks. I promise I'm the same age. Only gotten older, yeah.
Doing this right.
Kind of. I mean, you're gonna need to loop because you don't know how big of a matrix.
I'm trying to figure out. how to do the streams.
So,
I just begin to bring.
is that correct?
I was yeah.
So the time. Run it, test it.
Just another unique representation. So, like one. What's my name?
There's.
Probably. I wouldn't go for that. Or maybe close.
like, I'm gonna have to check if it's a power every single time.
You don't have to confirm the How do you know that?
Because if you rearrange a EVA,
What else do we know about it?
it has equal characters. Every character has a duplicate of itself.
Okay. Interesting. They're key to Soul doesn't have it yet. It is. How do you know?
Is it even? Is it even? At the same time, there's an even amount of A's and B's, but the thing is, like, we're still
What do you about?
Will. Yes.
It is.
Yes. No. So does it have to do with because he's like
But still, yeah. I'm the
I mean, I think so.
All right, so let's go through this one. How'd this one go? Yay, nay, okay. A lot of mediums. Okay. Cool. So before we even code, can anybody kind of like talk me through a strategy of what needs to happen? Okay, John.
So we want to target arrays to make keys and values. And what I did was just to see inside it by doing like, I call it array inside the arguments or function. So
Okay.
I do like array 0, 1, array like 1, 1 to see the content. And that idea is going to push into the object and to array locations like X and Y.
Okay, so you're saying a plan of attack is we're going to have to loop through the array and look at the individual small arrays inside and break them up into key and value. Okay, sounds reasonable. Did anybody else have a different way of thinking about it? Yeah, Jay.
Constructor function.
Oh, you made it a constructor function?
Yeah.
Cool.
Not working, but that's what should be.
Okay, yeah, you could definitely make it like a whole class to convert. That's cool. Let's go with Johnny's way this morning. See how it goes. So we're gonna write our function xi, and it takes in an array. So he said we got to loop through it. What's a good? And what else do we need? If we're gonna return an object, yeah. Okay, how come?
Because we need it for the return.
Okay, yeah, makes sense to me. Virginia says we need an empty object because we need it if we want to return an object, and we don't have it. So let's make it. I said, all right, sounds fair to me. So then looping. What kind of way do we want to loop through this? What's our options to loop through this?
I know a for loop, but I guess we could do a for each as well.
Yeah, we could do a for each or a for loop. We've been doing a lot of for loops lately. Let's try to push for a for each. And if we want to see a for loop, we can do that also. So we'll say array.for each. And so each element is what? What is it? Yeah, right? It's like a mini array. So I'm going to call it a set so it's a little more clear. Okay, so we've got this mini array. And what do we know about it?
It has 2 elements.
That has 2 elements, okay. And what about those elements and how does that translate to our problem?
Yes.
Index 0 and 1 for what things?
Medium.
Okay, but for, why do we want to know it?
As a key and flag.
Okay, so Leo says we need to do index 0 for the key and index 1 for the value and put those in the object. Is that correct? Okay, so if we said, let's say we had let key be mini array at 0 and let value be mini array at 1. And let's look at these. Console.log. Let's just see what we've got. Okay, so that looks pretty good, right? That's going to be our key and our value. It's being printed twice. Why? Why are we seeing everything? Winter?
Because when you key into a 2-dimensional array, 0 is the first array itself in it, and then 1 is the first, is the array, the second array itself.
Sort of. This is actually referring to the same element. So we're getting the first array's key and the first array's value. I don't know if that's the same thing. I might have misunderstood what you're saying. But it's printing twice because we're in a loop, right? So, and each element is their own little array. So how do we set a key value pair in an object? Who can help me with that? Max.
Object. Bracket. Key.
We're going to assign it to the value, right? Okay. What else? Anything else I need here? Who said this? Okay, yeah, nice.
We need to return the object.
Where?
Between like 9 and 10.
Yeah, so line 10, let's return our object, give it a run. Okay, looks good. Questions on that? Every night?
For some reason, the array left filter. I tried to filter.
Tell me more about that. Which would be a little array. Okay.
First of all, I declare variable left keys equal array left filter. And for each EL, I just filter every element of zero.
Okay. That almost sounds like you were going for like a mapping like quality. Because filter is going to return the elements as a whole that give us back true from the callback. So I think Matt might serve you better on that one. Davey?
Can you, show us what the rules
They're like the street's really loud. Can you please repeat yourself?
Can you show what reduce?
Yeah, that's actually going to be the next part of the warm-up. So I will show that in a second. All right, any other questions on this way of solving it? Okay, so for the next part of the warm-up now, solve it using reduce. Solve again with reduce. Sorry, Dave. You're a step ahead of me. Yeah.
There's more than
Or is- Actually just treat it. It's too easy to say, I'm sorry.
They're separated.
gonna get stuck in extreme.
Yeah. It's kind of this way. Here's the- Yeah. It's the same.
Change like
All right, let's do it. Let's go over. Okay, so let's use inspiration from our last function, objectify, and get this going. All right, so we're going to say function objectify, fix in an array. Okay, so what's so last time we made this object that we wanted to return because we didn't have an object. This time we're using reduce. So what's our plan of action? What do we think? Do we have one? Alex?
I think we can make the accumulator an object.
Yeah, exactly. So Alex says we can probably make the accumulator an object. So that sounds good. So let's say we're doing array.reduce, and this is going to take some kind of callback function that takes 2 arguments, right? Accumulator element always. That's going to be the callback function. Reduces second optional argument can be the initial value for the accumulator, which Alex is saying should be an empty object. Okay. It's looking okay so far. And what do we think is eventually going to be returned from all of this?
Like this is going to return. Like since we're already turning this into an object and we know we need to get an object returned.
Okay.
It's safe to assume we can already return on line 13.
13, is that what you said?
Like before they already reduced 13.
Yeah, perfect. So Jenya says, we know that we are going to turn our array into an object, and that object is going to be the desired object that we're trying to achieve with the key value pairs. So it's safe to assume that we can return the output of our array.reduce. So she's saying we can add a return at the top there on line 13. Christina.
So what I did was I on that line, like where return is right now,
Mm-hmm.
I did let result equal, and then I returned the result. Is that the same thing?
Yep, totally fine.
Right.
For those of you who couldn't hear, Christina says that she assigned a variable to the outcome of this, and then on line 16 would return that variable. Totally works. All right, so what do we need to do here? Let's use our pass function as a bit of a map. I'm currently calling this current element, but this should be pretty similar to what up here? Mini array, yeah. So I'd say it's essentially the same thing as mini array, right? So we can say key equal current element at 0. Let value equal current element at 0. Okay. So if we're there, thank you. Otherwise, we're going to name, right? Okay, so from there, what do we think? We had our object at key and value last time. What is object? What do we? Who said that? Leah?
Yeah, ACC.
ACC. Okay, so we can say ACC at key is equal to value. And so what am I missing now? Anything left to do? Return? Why?
Because we need to return instead of reduce function.
Because?
Because reduce needs to return.
All right, Crispina?
I feel like because of the callback is a function, and we need to return there because the callback needs a return in order to like give reduce whatever we're coming out with.
All right. Can anyone else explain it as well? What happens if I don't put a return in the reduce? Trey?
Won't, return out of the array method or the
It will. What does reduce give back to us? When we use reduce here, and we say that we eventually want this object filled with key value pairs, what is that? Yeah, Diana, go for it. It's the accumulator, right? So reduce's final result is whatever was the last accumulator. And where does reduce get its accumulator values from? Like the core functionality of how reduce works. Where does it get its accumulator values?
current element.
Not quite. Yeah. So Diana says it gets its accumulator values from the result of each iteration. Whatever was returned in the last iteration becomes the accumulator of the next iteration. So if we want to still have access to this exact same object, but now with the keys added for the next iteration, we have to return our accumulator. And it still works. Max.
We can also make current element in an array with keys and values. We can do accumulator bracket key with that.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Instead of having current L, you have an array that has key and value inside of it.
This is what that is, though, right?
Yeah, so it's basically the same thing, but instead of having let keys and let values, you would just have that in the array. It would make it shorter.
You mean right here? You would write current element of 0.
Counting out the two let keys and value.
Okay.
And where you have current L, put in an array with keys, comma, value.
That wouldn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, this one should work.
Cool. That's going to be confusing to a lot of people. Yeah.
I was trying like verify the logic behind the accumulator key value. Like is it basically like accumulator, which is the object at key that like automatically assign the object like at that space the value of like whatever key equals to?
Yeah. So the way we set elements in an object is by keying into them with the key that we want and assigning them to the value that we want to be at that key. So for anyone who's saw Max's solution and saying, what is this? This is referring to object destructure. That's all. So since the current element is an array of 2 elements, it's assigning it. It's kind of similar to that swap function we wrote. Remember, it was like A, B is equal to B, A. We did that last Tuesday in our bubble sort, but we did I and comma I plus 1 is equal to I plus 1 comma I. So that's what he's doing here. He's just saying, because this B will be, then the value of that will be A, and this B's value would become A here. And so he's saying if we already know that this is going to be the key value, we can put them in like that, and it will automatically do that. It's like a nice thing that JavaScript is giving. But you don't have to worry about that. You can also write current element and do it the other way. Totally fine. All right, any other questions on reduce? All right, cool. Let's take a 5-minute break. Be back by 11:37.
Or
Hmm.
we're only covering Express 1 for lunch. And Express 1.
We might, maybe, yeah, we'll see how it goes. We might touch a little bit of Express 2 and pieces of 3. Each in in order, like, or based off of the assignment, but we'll also like kind of review what we talked about on Friday. All right, let's do it. Clap your hands if you can hear my voice. Boom, shakalaka, let's get going. Okay, so on Friday we talked a lot about Node, right? Are there any like outstanding questions that we still have from Friday? If not, I'll just kind of touch upon it again. But okay, so what did we learn on Friday? Well, we talked about package JSON. Somebody tell me what package JSON is / does. Someone that I haven't heard from today. Do I have to randomly call people? All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3. All right. We will try it. It's going to be this table. Alex, you're number 1. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Takia, what is our package JSON? Can't remember. Take a guess. It's okay.
That like helps like all like all the
So close.
stuff that allows us to do the
Our app. Yeah, totally. So Takia's got pretty much got the point. She says it's the thing that holds our stuff that runs our app. And she's totally right. So when we use npm install, right, which stands for, Trey?
No packaging.
Yeah, Node Package Manager is npm, and we with npm we install something called modules, right? What's a module? Crispina?
It's a file that helps us solve one problem within our like project.
Yeah, so it's a file, she says, that's going to help us do something in our project. Right, it's just a bunch of code that lives somewhere else, essentially. So when we npm install some specific module, we end up with this bunch of code that we don't necessarily see, but we can interact with, because we don't want to have 10,000 lines of code in our file if somebody else wrote 10,000 lines of code, but we might want to use some of the things that they wrote to help us. Okay, so when we npm install something -- save, it gets added to where? Andre?
To the folder that we're in.
Yeah, partly. Trey?
It gets stored into the package JSON.
Exactly. So that's where it gets stored in the package JSON. So for this one, we installed Chalk. We did npm install -- save Chalk, or I think we might have done it the other way. npm install Chalk -- save. I think they're synonymous. And because we put save, it gets added into our package JSON. And it also created what? When we did npm install something, what else gets created? Andre?
module.
Totally. So we also get this node module folder full of stuff, right? This stuff is all of the dependencies that our specific package that we installed depends on. So I depend on my family, right? I depend on my apartment, depend on my cats personally, right? And so if there was a package that was me and you installed me, right, inside of the node modules folder would be like Corey's apartment, Corey's family, it's Corey's cat, Corey's guitar, right? Because these are all things that I'm dependent on. I need these. There'd also be water and sunlight and all that. I don't know if sunlight would make the cut, but that would all go inside of our node modules folder, which we don't really need to read. However, our node modules folder is really big. So what can we do to not make a giant folder into GitHub? Eileen. Yeah, we can do .git ignore, which we did right here. And we added our folder that we wanted ignored, our node modules. So when we have this and we do like git status, git add, git commit, and then git push, we don't push our node modules. We push all of our other stuff, our valuable code, but we don't care about the node modules. Trey.
I did have a question. From part of the global installation point versus a local installation, is it always how do you know what the difference is?
How do we know the difference?
How do we know what the difference is?
Good question. So Trey says he remembers installing NodeMon, which we'll talk about and review briefly. And he said that we installed that in a global scope. We did npm install -g NodeMon, right? And then on these other ones, like Chalk, we did npm install Chalk --save. So one was locally to this specific file or folder project, and the other one was globally. So it was somewhere else in our computer. As we see inside of our package JSON, we don't have NodeMon here. It's somewhere else in my computer. And he wants to know when would we install something globally versus when we would install something locally. Can anybody take a guess? Ben.
Well, with NodeMon, it basically this is or allows you to make changes to your code on that code.
Okay.
So I guess it's something like that. That it works for across all your code. So there's something specific for a system.
Okay, cool. So that's definitely part of it. So Bane says NodeMon is something we use that listens to the changes that we make inside of our file. So if I go to our file and I say something like inside of here, and I go log request and I save, it restarts. And so he's saying, otherwise I'd have to do Command C and then run it on my own. Right? That's how we do it without NodeMon. NodeMon automatically does it. Takes a little bit of the labor away. And so he's saying, well, we can use that in multiple projects. And because we can use that in multiple projects, we should install it globally. Sure, that's part of it. What else? What if I use a module in all of my projects, like Express or something, but why might I want to install it locally instead of just globally? Can anyone take a guess? All right, let's do a guess. It's okay if you get it wrong. Oh, JR, all right, brave.
So one reason I can think of is because you actually know where the file.
Okay. Okay, so JR says one reason could be because we would know exactly where the file is. Okay, so I would say it's because we are going to be putting our code somewhere like GitHub, and there might be some stranger or friend who is going to download or clone our repository. And if what they need to run the application isn't in the local script, they're going to get a huge error. What we want all of the necessities inside of here so that when they clone it, and it will come with the package JSON, they can run npm install like that, and it will automatically install all the things they need. Yeah, Christina.
You're saying that if we wanted to share what we're doing, we need to make it accessible to the other people.
Yep. If it's necessary for it to run for them, we definitely need to make it accessible. So I'll get to you and you. But then just to add on to that, with like Jonathan's point though, it's like NodeMon, that's purely for us, right? That just makes our development process significantly easier. But for someone else who's just trying to see how our app works, they don't need to stop the server and start the server unless the rest of your code's messed up and they're trying to fix it. But they shouldn't need to use NodeMon. Okay? You had a question?
I'm just trying to make sure I understood what you're saying. So if it's something that everyone's gonna need, it gets installed locally.
Mm-hmm. Johnny.
What happens if you have multiple dependencies, like Chalk and 3 other things? I mean, we can type npm install, it installs all 3.
Yep. Yeah, we can have npm install, and let's say, what was another one we had? Figlet or something in the work? And I can install it by doing npm install. I guess I didn't need to do save. That's interesting. Maybe I have a more up-to-date node than I used to. You used to definitely have to do save. Still think you should. And it would have looked like this. Okay, so now I have Figlet in here. Just keeps adding, but then when someone downloads it and they do npm install, and I can actually show that happening. So if I go to my node modules folder and I delete everything, where's delete? There we go. Okay, so now I don't have a node modules folder, right? So if I save this, everything's probably still fine. Oh, I guess. Hang on, where'd that go? Did I also close the terminal window? Is this in HTTP? Oh no, we're in variables. Okay. Well, maybe I just hit something random. npm. Yeah. If node still work, it might still work because we haven't installed anything that we need. Yeah, it still works because we're not calling Chalk. However, if we needed it, it would say like, "Hey, Chalk's not." I'll do it. Hang on. So I'm going to comment out this code for now. Okay. And let's require Chalk. So I'm going to say const Chalk equals require Chalk, right? What requires a keyword that helps us require modules. And then we did something like console.log chalk.blue. And we say, hello, I'm blue, right? Am I remembering that correctly? I misspelled blue. Okay, thank you. But that looks familiar, right? We did something like that. Okay, so now if I run it, right, we get throws an error. It throws this big nasty error. It looks like it says it's a syntax error though. That's peculiar. Because I have this. So I have any other code.
There's no brackets, there's no brackets.
This bracket's on line 20. Ah, thank you. Okay. Let's try again. Oh, that's weird.
Is it like cash?
That is peculiar. Okay, so I still have Figlet. Let me delete this. All right, let's.
Mark, can you explain what's wrong? Like, why are you uninstalling right now?
I'm trying to get it to show the point of npm install.
Okay.
Because we currently shouldn't have Choc available to us. So this should throw an error.
Oh.
Jesus.
Or,
Yeah.
you have already deleted the modules folder, few months ago, and then you did it uninstall again, it added another package.
It showed Figlet that I had installed earlier. Okay, so sorry. I may have.
Can you check the version?
Check. Let's install a package I've never used before. Okay. Oh no, let's just do npm. Let's see if there's anything that looks fun. Did anybody find any cool packages?
Express.
I've used that one. Okay, let's just look it up. Fun and npm packages. Okay, I've never used Funnies before.
Corey, I have a comment on what you're doing right now.
Okay.
So when I was like researching this like database of a bunch of just random things, like it's from people, right? Just anybody off the street can make this stuff,
Mhm.
right? So like I was researching that, and I found something that said that you don't want to just get anything from off the street because it can actually have malicious stuff.
Definitely.
That's like getting your credit card number or things like that. I just wanted to like warn you guys, like when you're installing this stuff and you think it's really cool, like it actually can be something that's like a virus and hurt you, yourself, like your computer, whatever you're doing. Like, so just be careful what you're doing.
Totally true. You kind of want to look at these weekly downloads as a good indicator. 66 isn't very many, so I'm not that interested in that one. See if one-liner joke. 136. I'll take my chances. All right. So I don't have this one-liner joke right now, right? So I am just going to copy and paste this person's usage code. Oh my God. This is going crazy. Okay. And let's just require it of here. Get random joke, one-liner joke. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay. If this gives me a joke, I don't know what I'm going to do. Great. Great, yeah, perfect. Beautiful, okay. That's not the error we wanted. Let's keep going. There we go. Cannot find this module. Okay, great. So now, this is what we would get if I could add this to our package JSON. Let's see, one-liner joke. Go into package JSON, and I will add. Yeah. Liner joke. I don't know what the value is, so that's going to be a little weird. See if we can see a value.
Maybe like a version.
Yep.
Water.
Can't remember those 3 numbers. Okay, so let's just. Okay. Cool. So I've added this in our package JSON, and I'm going to clear it. I'm going to run it. Still get this, right? So this is what someone would get after they've uploaded your, like, they've cloned your repository. I mean, we can do that, but I don't think that's why. But sure, let's see what happens. Same thing, because we don't have this, we haven't installed this. So let's see what happens when I run npm install. We have 3, oh no, we just have 2 packages. And apparently Chalk exists somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to do npm install. So it tells me I've added 2 packages. And let's see, hopefully I spelled everything right on the other one.
Intensity. Guest management hasn't seen the alone. All right.
Oh, yeah. We didn't use the one that said funny. We just said one-line joke. So, do we understand? It was kind of like, it didn't go exactly as intended, so it was a bit more confusing. But, do we understand what npm install does? Yeah, so, Johnny?
How does it find a package? Like just type in dependencies manually and you just find the package. I don't know where to look.
I did npm install. npm install knows to go to package.json and to go through the webs, I guess, and find these packages. Not sure exactly how it's happening underneath.
So if you just type it, it would just do an error saying we can't find it.
I think so. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna query and cats.
Can you say what you're doing right now? What is
I'm
it?
showing Johnny what an error might look like for a package that doesn't exist.
All we have to do is just type it in here and we'll just look it over without specifying and do
Not found. That's because there is no package called that yet, but it's in the works. Okay? Questions on package JSON? Johnny?
So package JSON is kind of like kind of how GitHub is, like a giant source of all packets that people put to it, and then it goes to that one site, looks for it, something like that.
Yeah, kind of. So package JSON is more of like a recipe book for your application. So you have to go get all of the right ingredients before, like it's more like the ingredient section than the actual, right? And when you read a recipe, it's got like the ingredients and then it's actually like mix, match, cook. This is like your code, the mixing and matching. And then like the list of ingredients that you need is more like your package JSON. So it's just like, oh, you need some salt, you need some chalk, you need some figlet. Go get all that stuff. Mm-hmm.
You see how just type that you have chalk somewhere in some file somewhere else, right?
Must have it globally installed.
Right? And then you will just chalk. You never have to give a root, right?
That's right.
That means that they can go through your whole computer and if there's a file that has chalk anywhere, it might be able to access it and use it.
Possibly, yeah.
So during that test, we might not have to download chalk. Again, we might just be able to access it from.
Sure, but if you wanted Chalk to show up on your test, please download it again with npm install chalk -- save, so that when I download your test, I don't have an error.
Because it's one of the core things, and that's what we have to download locally.
That way, when I go npm install, if your app requires Chalk, and I don't know why I have Chalk, to be totally honest. And install. Figure it out. All right, well, whatever.
Well, maybe if you think it has chalk too.
Yeah, it does, but don't count on. I don't know if Reed's does. He might grade it.
Let's say open process, just to confirm. npm install missing dependencies.
npm install what?
npm install installs missing dependencies in the package.json file. Just to confirm.
Yeah, it goes through the package JSON and installs all of the dependencies needed. Crispina.
So this package.json file that we are manipulating, we can directly manipulate onto the list of dependencies. Like we can type in stuff and it'll upload, like it'll install just from like.
We still have to type in npm install.
Okay.
She said, can we manipulate our package JSON directly and have it automatically install? I said, you still have to write npm install or not.
Is there a way to see all the
Packages? I'm sure there is. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we see all. This looks pretty promising. Uh-oh. Oh, look. NodeMon, Jasmine, npm, create React app, AWS mobile client. Huh, interesting. I didn't install this. This is from a student, right? I changed computers with someone after last year. I updated my computer, but we didn't do a hard refresh of all their information. So I have their global installed. She was originally in the iOS class.
So Figlet is not global, Figlet is local.
No, but here we go. Let's do it. npm install Figlet. Wait, what happened? Missing. Oh, I have to sudo. I don't have access to a lot of this stuff.
And then something that is installed locally does not mean that it's going to be globally. I mean, that's global just mean that it's somewhere.
Global means it's somewhere in the computer.
So if it's local, then it's not kind of global also.
Nope, it's within your folder or project. Now we have Figlet. John.
Like let's say if I just install Chalk locally.
Yep.
What's the benefits of doing that and installing it in the project folder? What's the
The
benefits?
benefits is no matter what project you're in, you can always require Chalk and use it.
Oh, okay.
The huge disadvantage of that is if your app uses Chalk in a helpful way or a needed way, and I access your app, it will throw an error for me because it won't be in your package JSON when I do npm install. Crispina.
For some reason, I'm missing how you install something globally versus locally. Like
The
what?
-G
That's -G.
is for global. Local is just -- save.
Sorry, the last part you said was, if I install it globally, it won't show up my dependencies.
Correct.
So how do you make the project a chart? Install it.
It won't throw an error. The npm install won't throw an error because I will be able to install all of your list of dependencies, but when I go to run the code, then it will throw an error because it will say, hey, you don't have Chuck,
Okay.
missing module. And I'll have to then go npm install Chuck. And then if you have a bunch of them, I have to keep doing it after running it over and over again. Happened a lot of times on last year's tests. Kelly. Sudo, I don't have permissions to globally install packages on this computer, so I have to write sudo ahead of it to like get around that. I probably could, it'd take a while. I'd probably have to like change some sort of path thing in order to have that permission. But sudo is easy enough for me that I haven't felt like putting in the time. Leo.
Yeah. So isn't that package we just save it in local and global? Like the difference is that we just want to run our repository and be copied directly.
Yeah, so it's going to work the same. He's saying whether or not it's global or local, it's going to work the same on your computer.
Yeah.
Yes. The difference is it won't work the same on my computer when I clone your repository.
And you still can install the package one by one. Do something.
Yeah, I'm going to have to run it, and it will show an error saying I'm missing a module, and then I'd have to install that, and then I'd run it, and then it would show me an error saying I'm missing a module, and then I'd run it. Very, very, like, if you put a project up there and you say, hey, I would love to have a job at your company, and they clone it, and it shows an error, and then they install it, and it shows another error, they go, that's okay. I got another 1,000 applications. So don't forget to add it. Yeah, Muna.
Can you explain NPM packages again?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know which one we need and what do we use when?
What do we use when? How do we know which one we need? Oh, those are big, bringing the heavy questions. Okay, so sometimes, how do we know which ones? So sometimes you don't know which ones. Sometimes, so as you continue to program, right, you'll be exposed to more and more packages, and you'll hopefully remember them, and you'll be like, oh, I can use this. Other times you don't know, but like, let's say I'm gonna take in some sort of string, and I want it to be like an address or something, or I'm taking a latitude and longitude, and you know, maybe then I would probably start going to Google search, which is like making lat and long into address node, right? And then I go, okay, node geocoder. And I might be like, oh, let me research. Let me see what this is about. And I say, oh, 26,000 downloads a week. That seems relatively legit. And it says, I require it. It's got some provider Google, yada, yada. I have to have an API key. So I have to like connect it with Google, but I would be reading these docs and I would eventually see like that it's going to give me possibly what I want. You just kind of have to like keep looking sometimes for the right package. David, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to answer that, you never really know what package you want versus don't want. It's more what you're doing. So like the more code you build, the more you realize that you're gonna run into problems that you would try to solve on your own is really convoluted. So like, for example, trying to convert latitude and longitude in like some people, you can do that on your own, but usually you're like, wait, it's going to be a package that does that for me already. And then you would go and search that up and see which ones like suit you. So there's no right one to pick and choose. It's just like which ones are you comfortable with and like serve the purpose that you want.
You can use different packages at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Max number of packages.
No, if you're using it, keep it. Sometimes if you install something and you trying it and you're like, this package really isn't doing what I want it to be doing, just uninstall it then. Get rid of it. Good questions.
What about the API key? I saw requiring an API key to use module. How do you include that? How does that work?
I'm not gonna have to go into that, but that would be more of like reading the documentation and it will tell you. You'll have to get your API key.
Is there a specific syntax you have to use once you get
According to their doc.
okay.
Let's see, this is like something similar, it looks like. So you can kind of like go through it like, oh, okay, it's taken. So that's how I would do it, but you don't totally know what packages to use, where to use it. When you think something could be done easier and maybe there's something out there that exists. Any other questions on package JSON? Okay, cool. So what else did we talk about? We talked a little bit about this diagram where we have our client and our server. And we talked about how the client, which in this case is our browser, sends some sort of HTTP request. HTTP requests are, what are they? What are some HTTP requests? Okay, what's it stand for? Hypertext Transfer Protocol, yeah. And what are some of those? Spina?
Get, post, put, delete.
Yes, those are definitely some of them. She says get, post, put, and delete. I think we got patch. There's like one called head. You only want to know, really need to use the RESTful APIs, which are get, post, patch, put, and delete.
Is that also like part of like the HTTP node?
What do you mean?
Like 404.
Oh, those are going to be your status codes. So Trey's wondering about status codes, right? 404 is not found. 422 is like unauthorized. 500 is internal server error. 200 okay. Those are your main ones. And those are just the status that comes with the response, actually. So that's got nothing really to do with the request. So our browser here, our client sends this request, and it hits our server. And our server does something, right? It takes that, it's got a request object, it's got a response object, and it can do anything in between, but eventually it's going to give back some sort of response, which will have a status code attached to it. But that response could be JSON. That response could be HTML. It could be text. It could be my grandmother. It could be anything, right? It's whatever they are setting up to be the response. Hopefully not my grandmother. She might not fit through the computer. Although she's very thin, she's normal human size. She is buying candy like crazy. Anyway, but she is thin. But whatever, who cares? But anyway. Okay, so we've got kind of this like terrible infinity sign pattern, right? It's like got the client, sends this request, hits the server, sends out a response. Questions on that pattern? Okay, cool. And right, we've got this IP address, right? The DNS domain name. DNS. Domain name server, right? Does the lookup, it takes the address, gives us back this IP address. we get this copy back, and then we paint it, and that whole internet thing. So we talked about also this module yesterday, or Friday, called HTTP requests, or HTTP, I think is what we actually called it. Let's find it. Let's just see. Put a bunch of stuff. Right. So for this one, we had FS. What was FS? What do we remember about FS? Benny? File system. What did it do? JR?
Write, read, and modify files.
Yeah, right. FS, he says write, read, and modify files. So let's see if I have some of the old code that we were doing before. I think we might have kept updating it. But we did like this read file and this write file. We did FS unlink to delete files. We had mkdir to make a file, and we had rmdir to remove a directory. But we moved away from that pretty quick, and we got into this idea of streams. Can anybody tell me what streams are? Yeah, go for it, Chris.
It's like when you kind of break up all of the data on your web page so it loads separately.
Totally. So Chris said that streams was a way for us to receive chunks of data and to have them coming in separately, not all at once. So what's a real life example of when we would see something like that? Nikki. Totally. When we're watching a video online or anywhere, right? Well, not anywhere, not if we have the file, but like if we're watching it online, asking something to download 2.5 gigabytes before we play the movie, well, that's essentially torrenting, right? That's kind of what we're doing. That takes, and sometimes that can take days depending on the number of seeders. But if we're just like streaming it, we get these chunks, and we get to watch as long as the chunks are coming faster than the play is happening, we're able to watch continuously. All right, sometimes we get stuck, and it says buffering. What is buffering?
Wait for.
Hang on. Janelle, raise your hand.
Go ahead, Janelle.
Sure. Waiting for you.
Yeah, right. So buffering is waiting for that data. So we drew that diagram for whatever it's worth. Like this buffer bar. This is like the buffer. And we talked about these chunks of data coming in and filling up this buffer slowly. And this is one chunk, and then we get a second chunk, and then we get our third chunk, and then this sends that into the stream. Familiar, not familiar? Okay. So, yeah, Christina.
All the way at the end, is that when it's like traveling like through the fiber optics or whatever, like the stream? Is that what you're referring to?
This is data chunks. So,
I'm at this end. Sorry.
yeah, this is going to probably go into the writable stream that we're going to be seeing back. Right, because how many streams did we talk about? We talked about, up there. We talked about readable streams. This is things that read data in chunks. We talked about writable streams so that we could see things in chunks. And we mentioned that there's something called duplex, which does both.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the use of having a readable and writable?
You might not necessarily always want to do both. He said, what's the point of reading and writing if we have duplex? And I'm saying maybe we don't want to read and write. Maybe we just want to read. Maybe we just want to write. I guess the
So
user.
you wouldn't be able to like filter out which one to do.
I'm not sure. That's a good question. That can we filter out what we're doing inside of the duplex stream? I said, I don't know. That'd be definitely something cool to look up. That's not something I've done much of. Okay. So we talked a little bit about buffering and streams. And then from there, we got more into this idea where we were setting up this HTTP module, right? Where we were saying, require our HTTP. This was going to allow us to start our server. We started our server by writing http.createServer and passing in some sort of callback function that took a request object and a response object. And we also had a port. And this is where our server is going to listen for those requests. And so that's why at the end, we also would write server listen, and we pass in the port we wanted to listen to. And then for fun, and just to make sure we were connected and it didn't just look like we were in some infinite loop, we had this thing that said like listening to port and then our port number. And so, let's see what else we had in our notes. So we had this big chunk of stuff where we had inside of our HTTP, we would create this response.writeHead. And you can do it like this. I think they do it differently in the GitHub repository. They do res.status code. We were doing response.writeHead. It's just cleaner. We could have done res.status code equal to 200. Right? This is just assigning this key to the inside of our res object to the value of 200. We could have then done res.header. Passed in, all right, content type with text / plain or whatever type we wanted. This is one way to do it. We did it like this because it's one line instead. So we had this res.writeHead, which took in a status code as well as the content type. Eric. No, I don't. I think they're going to do different things. Good question, though. Ben. And our status code here. Cool. Okay. So then we created these two variables. We said const my reader stream. Let me comment this other thing out though. We don't need to run it. And we did create read stream, and we passed in this like this. What's underscore dir name? What's that give us? What is that? Someone want to throw up their hand that I haven't heard from today? Yeah, I guess I haven't heard from you yet. Abid? Yeah, that's the path of the current file that we're in. So we can say, all right, dir name / and then we passed in something, and then we created this writable string, and then we were doing. We can't see it now because I think I had deleted it, but we were doing something like. We were doing something where we were taking the read stream and then we were passing in to the write stream. But when we started using the HTTP, we decided that our response is a writable stream. Do we remember that? So let me say that again. Response is a writable string. Thank you, Trey. Right, so what's response? Yeah, awesome. So response is a writable stream. And so we also showed something called pipe. Do we remember what pipe is? What's pipe doing? Anyone remember? All right, Trey, let's go.
I'm not sure. If
It's okay.
It's connecting the readable stream to the writable stream.
Yeah, exactly. So pipe is something, right? Because we would read data so often, and then we would send it into a writable stream so often that we went, heck, let's do something called pipe, where we create this read stream, and right as it's getting data, let's pipe it into the writable stream. And since res is a writable stream, we can just pipe directly into res in this situation. Questions on that? Okay. So we also passed in, sure, what read stream and write stream, what we wanted to do was read things in chunks and then update something else with those chunks. So we had to read it and take in those chunks and then also pass that into our write stream in chunks. So both of those things had to be streams and be able to handle that. And that process is so common that they created something with this pipe, which just immediately takes the chunks from the read stream and passes it into the writable stream. No problem. And so the reason we have res here, so we were actually able to comment this out again, I think, because it's not being reflected as well in our notes. But because res is a writable stream, we could just pipe directly into res from our read stream. What else did we look at? We looked at sending JSON, where we do content type application /JSON. And we created a little object there, and we said res.end, which is how you also can end, like ready, give back your response. And we did JSON.stringify that object. This gives us back a JSON object. But it takes an object that's JSON and makes it into a string, and then on the front end we turn it back to JSON because it's fun. Renat? Good question. So as soon as we do res.end, if it hits that, that's the response that we get back.
Can you say what her question was?
Sure. She asked how many, if we can have like numerous res.ends. So that kind of goes up to like, well, we'll get to that in a second. So if I also had this res.end underneath here, it was like res.end, is it over yet? No, whatever that is. Then it would just hit this, and it would be done. It wouldn't make it to this.
So there can only be one res.end.
It's only going to send back one end. Okay. So eventually, we worked our way up to this big old thing, right? And we said we can console log our request.url. And let's see what happens. When we run it, we're going to say nodemon. What did nodemon help us with again? Exactly. So every time we make changes, it automatically restarts the server. So I'm going to say mod.js, listen support, and we go over here, we go to our local host, and I can go to different things. I don't think I have one for cat. Let's see what happens. We get this 404 not found, and we see that I passed in cat. So we had access to this URL, so that's pretty cool. And so then we did this giant like if, else if statements. So we were like, if request.url is equal to home, or just slash, then what we wanted to do was set our write head to 200, content type text/HTML, and we wanted to create a read stream, and that would read from this directory name /mod.js, and I was piping that directly into our res, because res is a writable stream. We're allowed to do that. Questions so far on this one? Okay, cool. So then we have an else if statement where we said, hey, if our request.url is equal to contact, we would set that also to essentially the exact same write head as before, but instead we're creating a read stream and we're passing in our contact.html. Yeah, Trey.
All right, so on lines 9 and 12, so on, what's the difference between unsupported returning and the difference of the HTML?
Tell me what you mean.
Because that essentially isn't like for line 9 isn't /mod.html a path?
Mod, what is a path?
Line 9 inside.
Yeah, so the DR name gives us the whole path to right where we are in this file, and then it's saying if we went /mod.html, we'd end up right here. So we're going to take this static file and pipe it into the response.
So it just gets a more specific path and uses /mod.html.
Yeah, so if we didn't have that, let's see what would happen. So I'm going to save that. I don't have to restart my server because it's going to do it for me. And we're going to go to home. And get this page isn't working because we can't find the data. We're hitting our, what's going on? We're hitting our if statement, but we're not finding this data here because we need that whole path. So if we add our name and cat those strings together, now when we refresh, we get hello world. Crispina, then Eric.
So the directory name, that red part, can you show the code again? Sorry. That part is pointing to our local files. The __ dir name is like saying, hey, we need to look into your computer.
That's exactly what it's saying. The dir name is saying we are finding the file within your computer. This is the full path. Yeah, Eric.
So yeah, I guess continuing what they are doing. Is it like saying www.facebook.com or Facebook.com? Somewhat similar, but only reading from your computer.
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
So we are going to eventually, it's going to be kind of funny because we will have essentially two things going on eventually. When we get to our full stacks, we're going to have our back end and we're going to have a front end. And so right now we're kind of playing with both, right? We're making routes here in the front end and seeing different things appear in the front end, which is being controlled from our Express server. Eventually, those won't be connected. So you'll have your back end routes and you'll have your front end routes. So Facebook's going to be a little bit different because when you go to a front end route, it's going to load a specific page, which will make its own calls to the back end, which will get that data. And we will get there eventually. Abed.
So you can go back to your images.
Yep.
So in that, the underscore directory name is that points right before the one.js, right?
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at it. I'll refresh here. We see that this is our underscore dir name. Users, C4Q, that's our old name. My computer isn't updated, to be pursued. And then we're in my desktop. On desktop, I have the folder called variables. And then inside of variables, I have that slash, oops, that slash mod.html. That's where that's getting that information. It's following all the way up. Questions on that? Yeah, Leo.
From the terminals, how can we identify whether the server has been resized automatically?
Well, if you're using Nodeman, it shows you. It says restarting through the changes, restarting through the changes. If you're not using Nodeman, you can be assured that it hasn't been restarted unless you've done it with your own hands. Johnny?
What about when no mod crashes? You made this attack here.
Let's see what happens for Nodeman crashes. Okay, Nodeman app crashed. Waiting for file changes before starting. Listening to portrait test. That's okay.
Save it, not restart, it just comes back.
No, but sometimes it's okay. Sometimes you do restart things anyway. Just if you've done a big change and stuff. Yeah, Christine.
I was letting what you said about the front end and the back end sit, and it's not sitting very well.
That's okay.
So I wanted to ask you what you meant by the front end and back end roots have their own specific roots. I'm not sure what that means.
I'm trying to decide how deep I want to go into that because we're not quite doing that yet. It's going to get confusing when we add the full thing because we're getting used to doing these routes here. But we will be using Express, which is a prettier version of what we're doing right now. And we're only going to be using that to access pretty much as data. So we'll have a database, which we haven't really learned about yet, but it will have a bunch of information, right? It might have all of your users and their names and their ages and their addresses and their grandmothers. And we will go to a people page on the front end, and that will make a API call. So it'll be like API/people, and that will trigger into the back end. Because our front end won't be talking to our databases, but our back end will. So we'll have Express, or like a node, go in and ask our database for all of the people's information and their grandmothers. And then it's going to send that back up to the front end. And then the front end will display that information in some way. But the routes you see like on Facebook, because Facebook is made with React, that's not really the back-end routes. Those aren't the calls being called. They're separate. React doesn't touch databases. Yeah. Right?
Can we go back to
Absolutely.
like line 10, for example. I understand what's going on when you going into the full path and into the file of .html. But when you create the link by using pipe, get the response. The response is the response to the HTML file?
These sort of. So the response is an object. These are all, like when this callback function happens, you have a request object and a response object. And what we're doing is taking this is something that we're reading, and we're sending it into the response to right to the screen. Eric.
So is it almost like creating your own,
Yeah, so when we get down to here, this is more realistic to what we'll be using these routes for. Okay, so then we go into our else if, and now we're checking contact. If we do contact, we do essentially the same thing as we did with home, but instead we're grabbing a different HTML that we want that says contact, which we can visually see here. Huh. Okay. There we go. And then we have another else if, which is checking for this API/people. Putting an API there is good practice for when you're getting data coming back. A lot of routes for data are usually like have API. Application programming interface. Yeah.
What you mean by that is like any route related to API, you have first like route should be API and the path.
Mm-hmm.
So like API/random for the dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Was that what it was for the dogs?
I think so.
Yeah. API usually is like saying we're looking for data. Why did that not give it to me?
There's a theme from, should be.
Got it. Okay, and we get that little object, which we created here. So eventually, this, like we won't be creating our own little objects here. This will be some sort of database call, where we'll go get the information from a database, right?
So what just happened is what we were talking about earlier, where it's an object turned into a string and the response of a JSON object.
Yeah, this is going to return JSON.
Because we're using string files on JSON.
I see. I'm saying, why does this give us back a JSON?
Essentially, it's giving back the same thing that we have because in the variable people,
Mm-hmm.
array of objects. I'm getting back the same thing, array of objects. But when you talked about earlier about having an object and if you call stringify on the object, it turns into a string, but then it gives back a JSON.
So if we were to call this with, let's say, fetch, we would still have to do the res.json. This is, I think, because of the extension I have to make it look this way, because that's what it will be. The extension's helping us here. Johnny?
Now, like in the future database, like we're going to be using hatch, delete,
Mm-hmm.
and the conditions we'll be calling the API. Well, we'll be calling our API path,
Mhm.
and then we'll be using those methods.
Kind of. Express is going to make that really easy for us.
And then at the end of it, we string again, all that. Deleting, posting.
With Express, I don't think we'll have to quite do that.
Can
Crispina?
I show the string by part again?
Sure. I mean, this is like the vanilla JavaScript way, kind of, right? Node comes with this HTTP, although it didn't come with FS. FS is No, it did come with fs. Right, so this is all like as if you were using fetch, right? Express is as if we were using Axios, like we're going to be installing something.
Can you please say what JSON dot stringify on the people? What is that doing?
Turning this into a string.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We can console log it too. Turns it, it looks similar, but it is a string. Have to trust me.
So just trust me on that. Sure.
Yeah, sure, let's try it. Maybe, I mean, I could be wrong, right? Something I've had to use. We're gonna use Express here. Yep, it's the string. Who'd have thunk? Good call on using the type of right, but plus any string and return it into a string. Right? Sorry, can you repeat that?
So you're just this string, so right to
JSON.parse for HTTP. To turn it back into an object, so it depends on which type of request we're making. So if we're using Axios, we don't have to do anything. It does that for us. If we're using fetch, the first time we get our response back, we have to return response.json. If we're using XML HTTP request, then we got to do JSON.parse response. Questions on that?
Can you say it one more time?
Which part?
Your response to her question.
Oh, yeah, sure. I was just saying that she's asking when we would turn that string back into an object. And I'm saying it depends on the type of GET request we've made. If we're using Axios, right, one of the advantages of Axios was that it already does it for us. If we're using fetch, then we're doing like return response.json, and then we get our response in the data we want. And when we first learned it with XML HTTP requests, we did JSON.parse response. No problem. So that's how we got our JSON, and then we had our final end, which was just if we hit a route that we didn't already have, we wanted to serve up a personalized 404. So they don't get that crazy page where it says like, no data. It just says this way, it's like, hey, 404. We could also have it say, 422 and say you're not allowed to go here. So, it could be anything. 404 is what makes sense though, because it's a page that we haven't written. Sorry. Questions on that process? All right, so this is pretty cool. This allows us to actually have a website of sorts. We have our home page, we have a contact page. We have a 404, we have an API call, and we can use them inside of each other. And if we refer back to our HTML, we added this, wait, hang on, we did it for people, didn't we? But we did it in contact, right? So we added some JavaScript inside of a script tag. So why did we add it right into our HTML file? It was because we didn't want to handle another request, right? Any kind of link to a CSS file, any kind of link or source to a JavaScript file, to an image tag, all of those are some type of request, right? Can we agree on that? And sure. So anywhere like when we have an image and we're saying source that image, right? That's a GET request. When we say link this CSS page, that's another request. When we say, hey, source code for all this JavaScript is on this other page, that's another kind of request, right? So because we were really new to this, we didn't want to handle all of those extra requests. So we just wrote them straight up in the file, right? This is a practice that we're just doing right now, but tomorrow we will be back, or actually probably later today, we'll be back to splitting up the files again, because that's a much cleaner way of writing code. Yeah, Johnny?
I wanted to ask about that. So we just include a script tag, like, let's say index2.js, and then copy all that to the index2 file. And then node-mod will be able to pick up that new index2 page.
Possibly. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to move into Express. So it's going to make it a lot easier. Anyway, inside of here, we still had the same regular JavaScript that we've been using, right? We had document.addEventListener. We used fetch because we didn't want to make another call because we weren't really sure how that was going to behave instead of Axios. And so inside of our route to contacts, we were actually able to go grab one of our backend routes. Right? I know we're all kind of in the backend right now. Like we're all in the same thing. But someday, this is a lot more similar to what we will be doing. This is a backend, like this is specifically an API call for data. Right? That's really how we're going to be using Express. We're going to say, go get me data. JR?
Is there a reason why you didn't specify, for example, 3,000 inside the fetch?
I think it just wasn't needed for this.
Okay.
Not sure if we could use it even. Yeah. I don't know if anybody tried using something else. Did it work?
I did mine with the local host 3,000 of data actually working, so.
And it did work?
It did work, so I was kind of wondering how was it like recognized?
It must be defaulting to it.
The same thing that JR did with the whole local host and the API.
And it works?
Works.
Cool. That's okay. Whatever works, right? That's the goal. That is the goal. So then we get our response back, right? This is like some sort of response object with that information, and we want to turn it to JSON. And then we got a response. Then a response is an array of people, right? We had Corey, 100, Grinch, 99. And we iterated through that. So with each element in that array, we had this person object. We grabbed the UL on the page that's down here. And we created a new LI for each person. We changed their inner text to their name. And then we appended the LI to the UL. And that's why our contact page has Corey and Grinch. Right, so there's two calls that happen when we call this. There's the one that we're seeing here as the user, the front end, so to speak, call. And then there's the back end call that is happening here that's grabbing this data to give us Corey and Grinch. Yeah, Christina.
So you're saying the front end call is us as an outside client, I guess, putting it into the browser as a link. And the other call is our computer giving data, like our response or whatever to that request?
Yeah, the other one is a backend. It's a call to our backend to go get some data. Cool? All right, let's take lunch. I think this is pretty much everything we covered. Oh, yeah, Janelle?
I was just gonna ask if you could
Thought I did on Friday, but I can do it again. All right, yeah, take lunch. Let's do it again. We'll continue on. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Your four page, right?
Sorry?
If you in the HTML text say 404,
Can't hear you.
is your HTML text you actually type 404?
404.
Yeah, and so when you when you got your
Oh yeah, that was in my.
you typed it.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Good question. No problem.
You got, you got that. Recorded it.
What were you